And welcome back. We are now going to continue with our review, today focusing on input and output. So the first thing we want to focus on is using print versus print line. Now this is something that we should already be familiar with. The biggest thing is, if we recall, that print and print line are both used for output. Particularly, we're looking at these for outputting to the console, not to a text file, binary file, or anything like that. We'll look at that later on. The primary difference that we need to focus on with print and print line is that, as you know, print should output to the same line, unless of course you put in an escape character that's going to return. Whereas a print line will automatically, every time you do a print line, will go ahead and go to the next line. You can also format your output using printf. However, we're not going to worry about using that right now. The primary thing we want to focus on in this review is using print and print line. Now, when we are getting input from the user, because input is equally as important as output, right? We have been using historically the scanner class, and the scanner class is a very handy class for us to use. So it allows us to get user input. As you might recall, we can use a scanner keyboard, and we can use it to get things like keyboard.int, keyboard.nextDouble, etc. So let's say we want to do that. Well, we create a scanner object, and then we use the object to get the appropriate input. So for example, I have scanner kb equals new scanner system in, string line equals kb.next, string line 2 equals kb.nextLine, int input equals kb.nextInt, double input 2 equals kb.nextDouble. You notice that each of these are different methods of the scanner class. Of course, next is simply just going to get whatever that next word you type is up until the next white space character. Next line will keep going up until the point where you type enter. You return that character down. Next int, of course, obviously we're looking to get an integer, and next double we're looking obviously to get a double. Now remember, there is no next char. We have to actually take a string, and we'd have to parse it and pull it apart in order to do that. Now we can of course use the scanner for file I/O, for reading and writing to files and stuff like that. But we're going to take a time in this course to actually take a much deeper dive at file I/O than we did in our first programming course. So we're actually just going to kind of put that off to the side for now, and we'll come and review that later. Now, I can't move us forward without, of course, talking about commenting, because this is a pretty quick lesson. I figured it'd be a good thing to kind of throw here on the end. With commenting, don't forget to do it. All right, it's going to save your life and your sanity, especially as your programs start getting larger and larger. Comments, remember, should be relevant to the program you're writing and should be used before method headers to describe a method. All right, we typically use things like single line comments for quick notes, and this doesn't have to go in front of a method. This could go anywhere within our program. But we're going to use block comments to describe a large section of code, or maybe even to temporarily hide or block off a section of our program without having to delete it and retype it in later. We can just comment it out. Now, the important thing I want to stress is don't forget to use the appropriate stylized comments that we talked about for JavaDoc. So when you start using all your different things, like for example at the top of your program, you use the @author in order to help stylize that. So if you were to have to generate a Java documentation file, it would automatically know the appropriate things to pull from there. So like if you have like a method that returns a value, you would put @return. All right, so let's go ahead and do a quick recap this from the coding side of things. So I'm just going to go ahead and in here, let's create the scanner. But remember, with a scanner object, we have to import that. All right, if we don't import, we're going to have a problem. It's going to look and say, like, I don't know what the scanner is. Where's you trying to get this from? So we have to import that from the Java util library. So scanner.kb, let's call it scanner kb, sorry, equals new. We want to create a scanner object, and that'll be system.in because we're getting input. And let's go ahead and create ourselves some keyboard objects. So just like we showed in the example, string input equals, let's do kb.next, string input 2 equals kb.nextAlign. We'll do int num input equals kb.nextInt. And let's do double num input 2 equals kb.nextDouble. All right. Now, if I were to run this program as is, so let's just go ahead and run this. One thing I want to point out with this program here is that if we run this and I have the program running, I present this to the user, they're not going to know what to do. So it is very important, even though I can type something in here and the program will go and do things. You notice we do get some errors thrown in here, right? And that's because we need to probably go through here and add in some directions. So for example, before the kb.next end, I might have a quick system.print line that just gives some directions. Please enter a word. And then I could repeat this for each of my appropriate inputs here. Because again, that's just going to help clarify what I want this program to do. So let's do integer, and let's just say decimal. Okay. Now that we have that in there, let's go ahead and run this and just see how this is going to change. So let's just do a word. How about code? All right. Please enter a phrase. Please enter an integer. Oh, notice how that double tap there. Now this is very important that we show this. I'm going to show you what's going to happen here. So I'm going to type 3 and 2, and we notice we get an error. All right. And the reason why I point this out is because kb.next didn't actually return to the next line here. All right. So we have to make sure that when we use kb.next, that we actually are making sure we push that carriage return down, because as you saw, we had an error still get thrown here. So if I throw a carriage return, there's just with a print line here. So we said code last time. All right, we notice we're still, even though it's pushing down, we're still getting please enter a phrase, and it's jumping right to please enter an integer. All right, so it's not even giving us a chance really to kind of put this in. So if I go ahead and type 5, now we're getting decimal, so 1.2. So that is one thing to kind of keep an eye out here for, because again, this carriage return says, oh, I'm going to skip this and just jump straight on down. So it is something to kind of work through. I'm not going to go ahead and troubleshoot that here right now, but it's just something we want to make you aware of as you work with these. Now, real quick, I just throw some comments in here. So this can be just a single line comment, and obviously we would have a lot more in-depth comments, but just a single line comment here with our double slash, and just says tests the various inputs of the scanner object. And then maybe I want, in here, we know we have something going on here. We say, hey, you know, we've got a thing here that we want to kind of come back with and work on. And so here's a block comment I can add in here, and I can say like not print line, but the next line is being skipped. All right. So we can put this in here as a comment, or you know, we could make this single line comment, how we want to do this, but it allows us to know that hey, this is not working quite correctly. And just as to show you with the Java doc one, I'm going to do this with 2 stars, hit enter. All right, oh, I got to move my import statement though, because it's got to go down below that so it functions properly. And in here I can put things like @author, and you'll see that it will populate that information for me. That looks pretty great. So again, these are really good. And one thing I could do is say, hey, if I know this is not working right now, one thing I can do just to show that is being commented out, I can do a block comment right here, and you notice as I start that, it does this, and then I'll just close that block comment out. And so now this line is skipped, so I can still run my program now without worrying about that. So code, let's do 5 and 3.5. And notice it works great. It doesn't run into this weird error because again, we've commented it out. I've left myself a comment that says this is here, so I know that I can come in and fix this later if I need to, or if it needs to be skipped, I can do that as well.